Can I just ask how you have reconciled the operation of the partnership outside of its contractual obligations? Because part of I think the contract says, I think it's £400,000, I think, reserve is required to allow the partnership to implement traffic regulation orders, and that is a matter that has been raised at these meetings several times, I think, over the past year, and it appears to be a fundamental breach of contractual behaviour.
A fundamental breach of contractual behaviour. Oh dear, that doesn't sound too good, does it? That was the concerned councillor raising that question at the North Essex Parking Partnership meeting held last July. North Essex Parking Partnership is a council-run organisation, and during the past financial year, the Joint Committee have held 2 meetings, the first being on the 18th of July 2024, which was held at Colchester City Council and was live streamed. The second meeting was held on the 23rd of January this year and was live streamed in audio only from a different location. We're now going back to the July meeting to find out how that really important question got answered.
Can I just ask how you have reconciled the operation of the partnership outside of its contractual obligations? Because part of I think the contract says, I think it's £400,000, I think, reserve is required to allow the partnership to implement traffic regulation orders, and that is a matter that has been raised at these meetings several times, I think, over the past year, and it appears to be a fundamental breach of contractual behaviour. So I just wondered how you reconcile that within your assessment.
Absolutely, and it's a very fair question, and I'm fully aware of those conversations that have been had during the year. I have attended other committee meetings during the year where the issue has been discussed, and the view that we've drawn is that the matter has been fully raised with the partnership, with the committee. It's not something that has been hidden, it's not something that all partners are not aware of, and decisions have been made at the committee about reasonable action in light of the situation we're in outside of that contractual relationship. If the committee hadn't been having those conversations and it wasn't documented and there wasn't a consensus of opinion from the partnership, I would then be raising that as an issue, but it has been recognised and has been responded to, and a plan of action is in place relating to it. On that basis, we don't consider that is something that would breach the controls. It's being looked at and it's being monitored.
I thank you for your answer, and I can see how you've sort of come to that conclusion, but it still doesn't answer the question that we are in a position where we're operating outside of our contractual position, and how do we reconcile that going forward? So I don't think you answered that question, but thank you.
I think that one's something to be reconciled during the year. If the position doesn't improve, then that's a different situation when we get to the end of this financial year.
But the councillor clearly stating that they shouldn't be implementing any new traffic regulation orders, so why are they doing it? Let's hear from another councillor, shall we?
NEP is operating outside of its contract. There's supposed to be a £500,000 reserve, otherwise new work stops.
Oh, it's 500,000, not 400,000. Oh, but still new work stops. Well, it should do, but does it?
Starting with Epping Forest and Colchester. Once they were resolved, we'll come over to Harlow and then finish up with the Braintree sites. Pleased to report that most of Colchester and Epping Forest sites are now done, and the results of which are contained within the appendices of the report. So hopefully you've taken the time to review those. And again, we're just asking asking the committee to approve those sites to progress to the formal consultation stage So again, this isn't a decision to put it in. This is a decision following what was asked previously to put it through to the formal consultation side of the process.
I just want to take the opportunity, as I'm here, to make a comment on the proposals for on-street paid parking. I appreciate that my district, Braintree, is not up for discussion today at the moment. Also appreciate that there are budgetary reasons for doing this. There are budget gaps that need closing.
Oh, so it's all about the council's budget gaps, is it? Nothing to do with parking or traffic issues. What about the small businesses? Not to mention the private individuals who are struggling to make ends meet.
And I also understand that this is a sort of pre-consultation consultation. No final decisions are made yet. I absolutely get that. I will say that considerable concern is already being expressed in my district on the prospect of paid parking on street. For example, Halstead Town Council are really worried that if this is extended to their town, that it will have a severe impact on the economic viability. It will affect small businesses and so on.
The Town Council have a right to be concerned because they have probably heard what has been going on in Sudbury and Hadley. It certainly seems to be affecting the economy there, but still they carry on.
So I think I'm very comfortable to take these forward. Some of the other schemes have been dropped as well anyway as inappropriate, so I'm comfortable that we can go forward as agreed.
And Epping Forest? We've got no objections and comfortable with everything as well. Thank you.
Everything includes working outside the contract.
So with that, the recommendation is the Joint Committee is requested to approve the advertising of additional on-street paid parking sites in the Colchester and Epping Forest areas as outlined in the report.
We're now going to January's meeting where Chris Hartgrove, the Service Director of Finance and the Deputy 151 Officer, is going through NEPP's financial update.
This is the finance report for the month 9 position for 24-25, which appears on pages 17 to 21 of the document pack. I suppose that the headlines is the projected budget outturn as at month 9, which we are forecasting a surplus of 44,000, just a small surplus. So the 24-25 pay award was only settled in December, just before Christmas, if I remember correctly. So the impact is in the region of approximately £30,000, and once that's processed, of course, if everything else stayed the same as at the 31st of December, then that would reduce the projected surplus from 44,000 down to 14,000. Still a surplus, but clearly not a large one, and it would help the reserve move in the direction that we all want it to move in and back into surplus, but it wouldn't be achieved by the 31st of March 2025. That would make the difference between a surplus and still recording a deficit balance.
So, summarising this, the reserves are still going to be in deficit at the end of this financial year. And looking at the budget to come, we could be just round about zero, possibly slight surplus at the end of 2026. Contract is that there has to be several £100,000. Is it £300,000 or £400,000?
Several £100,000, 300, 400, £500,000. Unbelievable.
In the reserves before we do any new TROs.
So another one admitting they shouldn't be doing any more TROs.
We're struggling just to bring it back to just balance just now. The prospect of building £400,000 of reserves is just not going to be there, particularly against parking income, which is the parking tickets. Against that fixed income and rising costs, economies have already been made, and therefore to make any more economies is always more difficult. So I'm suggesting there needs to be a reality check here that this is going to be financially difficult for the future, and we are not going to meet that requirement in the contract unless there's some other new vast economy project which is in prospect. So I'll just offer those comments on that.
I think it's fair to say the 400,000 reserve was in a different time, and we're now living with the consequences of post-COVID and everything else that went on that destroyed that reserve.
Sounds a bit of a mess, doesn't it? It seems that the authorities signed the agreement in 2022.
And I think, everybody seems to be making steps to, we've reduced the deficit was really the first key. Rebuilding reserves is a long-term job. Otherwise, what do? Do we double everybody's parking charges and fees to recoup the 400,000? I think we have to work steadily towards those reserves being rebuilt.
Mick?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I mean, I agree with what both councillors have said, that this is an issue that has been very clear for at least well over a year, that we have, not just in theory, but in practice, been operating outside our own agreement. And it still feels very uncomfortable that we sit here talking about TROs and implementing and so on, without acknowledging that. And I fully accept the difficulties, that there are in establishing a £400,000 sum when we have done very well, I think, to actually achieve a balanced budget over. Well, it appears that we're going to do that for the second year running.
So I think we've all got a responsibility, right? We've all signed up to this agreement. Yes, it's historic, and some of us have been quite bold and put in new parking charges on the street. We've done it in Colchester. Some of it's not been popular, where there's been streets that have been free since I was a kid. So they've been free for 50 years. And we've just put charges on some of it. But it is starting to bring an income and ultimately benefits all of you, because we're all in this together. Now, some of you have done nothing about bringing in on-street charges, and we'll be talking about that later, but that is one way of bringing in good income and, of course, dealing with the deficit. So, if we're all going to be adult about it, some of us are taking responsibility, others, I'm afraid, have failed. And I'm not going to mince my words. I'm always very straight with people. I'm far too straight to be a politician. But I think you need to all live up to the agreement by doing that. So I just want to leave you with those words at the beginning of this meeting. And this is one of the reasons I've come back from London from work, to deliver that message, because it's serious, and saying about the reality. The other thing is the NEP's been doing really, really well, because there's been numerous parking tickets given out in United Way, where there's there's not a red route, where there's cars parked every day, and it has brought in thousands of pounds, because it's a clear way up near the stadium and people keep parking there. Now, we're going to try and change that into a red route, but that's brought in thousands of pounds for this NEP, and it will continue to do so on a daily basis.
To confirm, the pay and display sites in Epping Forest and Colchester areas that were agreed by the committee at the beginning of the financial year, they were implemented following the informal stage and then the formal stage that was agreed by also the committee. About a 6-month point, so the income to be realised from those sites will be the final 6 months, and now we're well into that. The income is appearing to be on track for the remainder of the year. That's not, excluding the fact that for the first 6 months in that budget area it wasn't. I want to emphasise the point again that this isn't necessarily just from the direct income that comes from these sites. This is the efficiency in enforcement as well, and at the very least, converting limited waiting into paid parking, whether that's a free period of paid parking. I know that's a juxtaposition, but that halves the operating costs, because we only have to go there once and not twice. So that's why we're asking the committee to consider these sites in other areas, and if not these sites that have been proposed, then other roads and other sites in those districts.
Thank you. Mick, you wanted to speak?
If I can, I'll just come back on what Councillor Goss said. Seems to be implying that Colchester are the only authority that has taken this financial position seriously, and I'd like to refute that. As my understanding is that we have taken this very seriously. We, to the point of examining the financial, the accounts, having 151 officer meetings at our instigation to make sure that the accounts reflected the true position. And if you're implying that you're raising, you can raise money by introducing on-street charges, I mean, you're just wrong, because my understanding of on-street charges is to control parking problems, and I don't think you're allowed to raise money, actually. So we can't ignore the agreement as it stands, and that's, I think, getting back to the point that I was trying to make. We have to address that issue, and, I endorse any improvements to raising revenues, but they have to be within the guidelines and the regulations, and you can't just go around putting charges on streets to raise money to get net out of a financial haul.
I'm not sure that your guidance is quite correct, Chair, because under point 11A, it's basically saying that we are potentially approving those schemes. So when we say they go forward to the next stage, it basically means they're going to happen if there's a pile of cash in the bank, if I've read it correctly, so I just sound rather crude, but am I correct, Richard? So the next stage is, if we approve what's in Appendix A, they're happening. So I just want people to be clear on that. These aren't going to another stage. If the money's in the bank, they're going to get painted on the road.
How big has the pile of cash in the bank got to be? What about the reserve money, the 300, 400 or £500,000 reserve money?
Yes, you're right, Councillor Goss. You're making a decision to approve the schemes now to go to formal consultation. And if there are no objections at formal consultation, they'll go in. If there are some objections at formal consultation, they come to me. If I deem those to be 49, 51 or 50% each side, they'll come back to the committee. But if it's clear that we can deal with them, then I'll deal with them and the scheme will go in. If there's so many objections that it becomes ridiculous, the scheme wouldn't progress at that stage because objectors couldn't be acceded to. So there we are. That we've all got. The objections are on the weight of objection, not the number of them. I don't mean weight as in how many bags of them we've got. I mean the substance of the objections that come in. It's not numbers. There's no percentage involved in this. It's whether it's a substantial objection to what you're doing. So just to be very clear from the outset, as we said. And I did say right at the very start, because I can remember it when we first did it, we said it's about efficiency, but the elephant in the room is, as a byproduct, putting in charging for parking creates an income.
Isn't the real elephant in the room the fact that you do not have the 300, 400 or £500,000 in reserve and therefore should not be implementing any new TROs?
It's very clear it's there, but the reason we're doing it is for efficiency in the patrolling. We can't go around every car all the time for everything. It's ticketed, it's very clear, and we can do it very much quicker.
We have introduced some in Epping Forest, and I'd like to point out it's not only Whittam and Halstead that have problems with declining footfall in shopping streets and shopping centres. We have absolutely the same problems.
I think Colchester was the same. Now, we went out and the amount of objections are tiny when you look in the appendix, 1 area got 10, and where we did get some feedback, and we debated this very heavily in one of the previous meetings. We made some amendments to that scheme to try and make it more palatable, but in effect, like Epping, they've gone in. We did withdraw 1 or 2, which actually, when we looked at it, were not right, I think, for the area, but we did listen, and they were well publicised for people to feedback, because there was lots of comments on social media, but then of course none of those comments have come in as objections, which is what you always find. It's very easy to sit here and get angry on your phone and slam it down, and then you do nothing. So I would absolutely be in support of looking at the wider area and at least going to consultation, and if the public do come in droves and object, then fine, there is the legal process. We've done it in Epping, we've done it in Colchester, and we've listened. So,
what do you all think of that then? Do you all remember what Hayley McGrath, the Corporate Governance Manager and Deputy Monitoring Officer from Colchester City Council, said when she attended the NET meeting on the 18th of July 2024?
It's a different situation when we get to the end of this financial year.
Well, the situation hasn't changed, has it, Hayley? So what is going to happen now? Perhaps people will find out on the 20th of March when the next meeting is due to be held at Braintree District Council, obviously open to all members of the public, followed by a meeting at Colchester on the 19th of June. This is not the first time that parking-related issues have been covered by Council Watch. Rachel previously covered what was going on in Sudbury, and even the lawman became involved. As usual, please leave your thoughts and comments below. Thank you.